What's up, everyone? Welcome to my corner of the internet. I'm your host, Ryan Cramer, and this is Crossover Commerce, presented by PingPong Payments, the leading global payments provider helping sellers keep more of their hard-earned money. Happy Friday, everyone. Ryan Cramer with Crossover Commerce. Thanks for joining us again on another episode of our lovely podcast. It is Friday where I'm at. Hopefully you guys are enjoying. Had a great week. It feels like another year in the life of 2021. My gosh, I thought last year was long. This year seems like it's already been 30 plus years, but we're getting going. I feel the momentum going. I feel like we're starting to get our bearings again. Our guest and I were just kind of joking around today. We're like, my gosh, it seems like we can't even catch up from the holiday still. And I feel like across the industry, Amazon e-commerce, a lot of people are just starting to get things going again. Starting to get the business rolling again nonstop, but we're picking up steam. So we're ending the week. It's been an exciting week here on our show. And thank you again for joining us live on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and on Twitter. We go live on all those social channels so that you can obviously watch live, but also can consume later. So if you have to hop away and you find this content interesting, please go ahead and save it for later, watch it, give us a thumbs up, and subscribe to our social channels so you can see episodes coming up in the future. So we're super excited. And again, obviously, these formats will come in audio form later on down the road. We have a couple that are actually coming out this week from 2020 that are exciting. We're releasing those every single day at noon, even through to Sunday, and those will continue to roll out. So subscribe to them on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, as well as Spotify. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring in my guest today. We have, this is episode 39 of our show. It's already trucking along. We have so many guests, but this one is super unique because the title, as you guys saw, was Amazon Matchmaking. And when I think about matchmaking, I think about just the relationship aspect of either someone personal, or you even talk about like Hello Dolly when she's a matchmaker. All those things kind of run around in my head, which is kind of funny to think about. But our guest, founder of nReach, is an Amazon matchmaker. And what that means is, for simple terms, finding Amazon sellers and partnering them with the right kind of service providers. So Chris Fryburger is our guest today, and I'm going to go ahead and bring him on. Chris, thanks for joining us today on Crossover Commerce.
Ryan, thanks so much for having me on. You couldn't have described what I do better. So, but yeah, thank you so much. And by the way, on your comment on the age thing, every week is like an Amazon year these days.
I know.
So it seems like it, but yep.
We had a comment already come through from Asim saying, I'm assuming Asim, you're talking about this week feels like forever. So yeah. I appreciate you commenting on that. So like I said, for anyone who has questions about what Chris does, or just to clarify questions, go ahead and submit those. We'll see everyone who's here live. And then after the fact, if you have to watch this later, go ahead and comment and we'll tag Chris. He can obviously connect with you guys at a different time. At the end of the show, we'll show you how to get in touch with them. But yeah, Chris, Amazon matchmaking, that's such an interesting concept. And when we initially talked about a couple of weeks ago before Christmas, just kind of what you did, and we're going over high level, maybe tell us a little bit about how you got into the space, maybe some personal background, professional background, and kind of set the table for us.
Please. And again, thanks for having me on. I always love to talk about Amazon. It's just such an exciting time, and I'm sure we'll talk about why it's exciting and so on and so forth. But yeah, I go back about 25 years in the ad agency business. So you can think about just about any kind of brand across any category, B2C, B2B, small brands, startups, startup agencies, all the way up to, I'm actually here in Cincinnati and have worked with the likes of, say, Procter and Gamble and the like. And so about 2.5 years ago, my whole background's about, all digital agencies doing everything from, your social media campaign to your website, to your SEO, to your PPC, and so on and so forth. But, the brands we were working with all were asking, well, what do we do about Amazon? And for the most part, that industry is very slow moving, the ad agency business. And they really have not answered, come to the call of, hey, all these things that you do now in the, say, Google world or the non-Amazon world, there's an equivalent of in the Amazon world, and it's desperately needed. So the rules are different. The companies are younger, the tools are more rudimentary, the data is, just in its infancy. There's no developer community, there's no support from Amazon, and so on and so forth. And So with nReach, what I realized was that there needs to be somebody to go through and vet these folks, these young agencies, and tools that are coming up out of this new universe. And so what I do is I simply find the best in each of the categories. I do things like marketing agencies is a very common thing. Brands looking for marketing solutions, optimization, those type of things. But it also goes to legal issues, financial issues. Hiring is an absolute nightmare in this space, as well as programming and on and on. And so nReach is just a network of folks that I hook up. I like to think the best and the brightest with the folks that need them.
Yeah, so that's an interesting concept in terms of like how you're connecting people. And the first thing I think about is that you don't have to be just an expert in one specific field. You have to be almost like knowing the who's who of businesses, service providers, almost have a Rolodex of people. If they say, hey, Chris, I have this problem. I need to find a logistics partner. I need to figure out how to source from China, or I need to figure out how to solve problem XYZ. And you have to say, done. This is who you need to talk with and point them in the right direction. So what was that process like to know that like you had this basically Rolodex of individuals or service providers out there that you're just like, hey, this is who you need to talk to. You're not going to be disappointed, and then kind of go through that process with us.
Sure. So I was actually, nReach was going to be sort of a directory that sort of, everybody got treated equally, and you can search that directory and so on and so forth. And there's some things like that exists out there. There's one called Sermondo that does that. But what I really quickly realized, and no offense to them, is that, really to choose an agency is almost like choosing a partner or, getting married, if you will. And really, it's just like that in the sense that you not only have to vet them for their skills and their capabilities and that they do what they say they're going to do, but also, you have to like them, because ideally you're doing creative with them, you're coming up with ideas, marketing ideas, and so on and so forth. And so it's very much a partnership there. So, which is difficult, but, another aspect or, one aspect, or I should say that no interaction I have is the same. No two companies looking for an agency are the same. But also, the way that Amazon sliced and diced, things like distribution and logistics, there's a lot of questions on a lot of things of Amazon. And again, every company is coming with a different perspective of Amazon and a different, set of needs. And so one aspect, for example, people call me, Mr. Wolf from Pulp Fiction, because
right.
So one aspect is, hey, we just got delisted. We're losing, $100,000 of sales in a week. We need to get back up yesterday. And if you go through the Amazon channels, as you guys know, that's a nightmare. So, I've got a guy who can, make a call and make the body disappear. And so that's one aspect of what I do as well. So.
No, that's really cool. I mean, in that concept, like it's super interesting because when people there's just so many people out there. I even feel like in 2020, there's this crop of like a wave of companies. Like the term roll-up company actually is a term that's being broadly used for these kinds of companies like Athrasio or like these other companies who are buying and purchasing these different brands on Amazon, the reselling. So that's one aspect, but you have to actually be at the forefront of knowing what these companies are going to be good at and then trying to like problem solve. But when we were talking initially, the problem that you were solving were entities like retail entities that were actually trying to get onto either e-commerce or Amazon. So what's that process like? Because a lot of people just think like, oh yeah, like all these companies have e-commerce figured out. Like if they're a big Fortune 100 or Fortune 1000 company, they have e-commerce figured out. Why wouldn't they have? But that's not necessarily always the case. Is that true?
No. So, there's many soapboxes I could put down and stand on right now. And if I may, one is just portraying the promise of Amazon, which again is an hour-long discussion. I would say, put a flag in there for a moment if for your listeners, and I would encourage in the liner notes is you put that PBS Frontline documentary on Amazon. Came out about 8 months ago. I think it's called Amazon Empire, and I really think anybody in the industry who may be myopic and think that's really getting crowded, or people that outside of Amazon that don't quite get its importance, it's mandatory viewing that documentary, and just to get like, oh, okay, I need to follow that guy is basically the gist of it. So
yeah,
but yeah, there is ignorance replete all, from the small seller all the way up to the, Fortune 500 brand. I mean, it really is the beginning of, what I would say is really a .com type feel. I have gray hair in my beard. You're too young to probably remember.
I'm losing it, man. It's all good. For those of you who can't see me, if you're watching or listening on just podcasts, my friends always joke I'm the first one to lose all my hair and that receding hairline. It hits you when you're 30s, and then it's downhill from there, right?
Sure. And I've got both. So, but the gray hair earns me the fact that I was around in like 1997, after the launch of Netscape, which
I won't tell you where I was in 1997.
I don't. Please don't. Please. But if you knew HTML back then, you did really well for yourself. And it's really that environment right now. It just has an Amazon label on it. I mean, he's just. Again, I will get off the soapbox, but he's only got 14 or 15 countries now. How many countries are in the world? He's covering the globe. He's just getting started. And so, with that said,
meaning Jeff Bezos, yeah.
I'm sorry, the man.
Sorry, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Bezos, as we like to call him.
Right. Yeah. So I apologize. It's with the name behind my head.
Oh, you're all good. For people who haven't probably figured it out, he is Jeff Bezos. So, and that's also a very high level, I would say, psychological concept that you've brought up is when all the different marketplaces, maybe I forget if there's up to as many as 30 different ones that are either been announced. I don't know the exact name or number off the top of my head. But with all those different marketplaces in place and just not even being in some of the biggest countries out in the world, there's still markets to be tapped into. It's really kind of baffling the terms of growth potential for not just for business owners in general, like Amazon business owners, but then business owners who aren't even starting on Amazon even yet, which is mind blowing.
It is. Keep in mind, for instance, you had mentioned the roll-ups that are happening. We can certainly talk about that. Roll-ups being people, the agencies, the unicorns that have these tools that know how to pull the levers and sell on Amazon. It's not easy, by the way. If you're a brand out there, this is not, getting on Target.com. This is not creating a D2C website. This is none of that. This is completely different. And so you have to solve for a lot more things on this side. So there are the unicorns, which are the people that know how to do these things, are at a super premium right now. And if you're a brand that's figured out, it's gone through the membrane and is now in large part, reliant on revenue from Amazon, or in the case of Anchor, which is the first company to go public as a brand that was native to Amazon, started on Amazon, only sold on Amazon, and just went public, which was, again, another thing that happened in the last 8 months, which was cataclysmic for the space as well. But if you're a brand that's figured out Amazon, you're now at a premium. So you might evaluate yourself at 2 or 3x your revenue. If you figured out Amazon, you're now at 4 or 5x. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, so again, because the retail shelf just shrank 30% and may not be coming back anytime soon.
Yeah, that's also true because we don't know what the shopper mentality. I almost think you have to, for your job, you have to almost forecast a little bit about, hey, this is kind of where trends are going. It's a safe, I'm not safe. There's always risk in any kind of investment. But what's kind of a day-to-day life for you that you're reaching out to these companies, or what is someone in your capacity doing to make these either deals or handshakes happen, whether it's just talking or whether it's business alignment? What's that look like?
So my nReach is entirely built on networking. I get opportunities coming and going. So if something, for instance, I've sent business to someone and something else falls outside the purveyance, which is everything, there's many other aspects of Amazon, they'll send them back my way. And I'll solve for that and back and forth, and that's the current model of this of nReach, but it is evolving. I'm working on things like consultancies and maybe groups of agencies that can get together and solve problems together, things along those lines. And the reason I mention that is that really, all business plans have changed with Amazon. I mean, a lot of industries have completely changed. Sourcing of product, for instance, has completely changed. I'm speaking, to your question. I'm speaking with one of the largest product sourcers in the North America, and they realized that, hey, we don't have to take this electronic item and put it in a Best Buy, and Best Buy is the one that makes the huge markup, and they're making all the money. We can just get it from the Japanese manufacturer and put it right up on Amazon, okay, and make a lot more money and take that retail markup ourselves, right? So right there, they eliminated maybe 2 or 3 jobs doing that. So there's things like that going on. There's the internet. I know you have an international audience, and so one of the challenges going on right now is how do you take a seller that's figuredout.com or North America, maybe possibly CA, possibly MX, but then where do they go next? And obviously India is second largest, but has a lot more challenges, say, than a Germany or a UK, and which also have their marketplaces have unique ability. Like they have huge brand awareness and brand loyalty in the Germany. Apparently, I did not know that. And so if you can sell there, if you can sell there, you always sell there. If you can't sell there, you never sell there. So it's just interesting things like that. So internationalization. Even the people with the keys in the .com in the U.S., the best and the brightest doing ones I work with are now the front line is now, okay, now they've got to go, okay, now we've got to, the tools are a little different. Things are, obviously logistics and regulations and VAT tax and all those things. But that's where the work is being done. It's now taking around the globe, brands around the globe for the first time, so
Absolutely. And a lot of those points that you're talking about is like that international expansion is what obviously ping pong values in most, and kind of like offers on the financial side is like, how do you figure out your money internationally? How are you paying these international entities? Whether it's even sourcing, or whether it's paying your virtual assistants, or you're paying these like advertising entities, all these kind of things that people just don't think about outside their own like bubble scope. And if they're selling in the United States, there's some like e-commerce is connecting people worldwide instantaneously. And so there's all these different like moving gear parts behind the scenes that are, how do we make you more profitable as a seller? How do we make a business more profitable? And at the end of the day, that's where solutions like us come into play. And you're kind of like shining light on those kind of businesses, if you will. So super interesting. What's kind of the, maybe, is there a story that you can kind of tell us, like a success story of a business that because you're working with like more higher end clients, correct? That it's not just like someone can randomly come up to you. It's like, I have not sold on Amazon ever before. Like, help me out.
Yeah, and I will help those folks out. And there's great training materials. I mean, if you look at the space of like courseware, there's a lot of like fly by night, get rich millionaire things, but there's some great content done by some of the experts in the space. And so that training material coaching is what I would recommend to that person. So I do help them out. I help someone self-publish on Amazon just because I wanted to know how that worked. An interesting, something interesting that it's being put together now, kind of thing, is that there are many eddies in little different spaces where even though you might be able to sell on Amazon Prime, as an agency or a seller, you think you figured that out, but the eddies of like Amazon Fresh, for instance, and how do you, if you have there's a lipstick I'm working with that they never thought that, hey, we were killing on Prime, got that figured out, but over here, there's no reason that they couldn't actually apply to be in Whole Foods, and then also or in Fresh, and that is an entirely different skill set. You're even if you figure that out, you don't figure those things out. Another interesting thing is like the jewelry sector. I learned this the other day. It has entirely different regulations around it. Actually, there's an entire department within Amazon that does nothing but test jewelry, for carat, plating, all those things, the claims that a jeweler may make. And if a jeweler makes the wrong claim and they, randomly get tested, they're thrown out not only as that listing, they're thrown out as a seller.
Oh my gosh. I did not know that.
Yeah.
For the jewelry sector.
Yeah. So it's interesting eddies within all those things that are going on. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but there's just many things. There's so many interesting, like even down to the data level, there's some really cool stuff going on, like at the analytics level and figuring out customer lifetime value and those type of things out of the minimal data that Amazon gives you and stuff. So anyway, but yeah, it just goes on and on. It's a fascinating world. And once you drink the Kool-Aid, which I recommend everybody do, it's blue skies over here. There's no competitors. There's everybody's trying to figure it out. Everybody's hungry for it. They come to you, that kind of thing. And so it's just a different world. So
absolutely. I mean, that to that point, a lot of people are, I think if you're so close to it as a seller, you see a lot of the competition, maybe just for yourself. But there's just all these different ways to kind of iterate and kind of grow outside, like just different products, kind of different services that you can provide, so on and so forth. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of misstep and say, you can't be successful on Amazon. You obviously have to do the groundwork. You have to do the education. You have to kind of find your way. And there's opportunity. It's a marketplace in general. So it's not just, it's not like a retail store where there's a maximum capacity of like retail shelf, like you had mentioned too earlier. It's kind of this ongoing kind of unlimited potential, theoretically, if you will, of opportunity. So when you're doing kind of this education, it sounds like a lot of it's like you have to learn, you have to do it yourself. You kind of have to like get all the details. Where do those connections and that education come from?
Well, there are many ways that companies are trying to solve for that skilled workforce, if that makes sense. So that the flip side is the employer that needs the skills. And then if you're somebody that is interested in learning those skills, what I would recommend, again, there's some great courseware out there that I can recommend. Obviously Google, I learned HTML without Google. I almost said like, oh, I learned it by Googling it. Like, no, Chris, you didn't, because it didn't exist.
It didn't exist back then.
Right, exactly. So I did catch myself. Maybe I'm too old now. But I would recommend, and I if I could go back to that young person in '97 and say, this is what the internet's going to be, right? And this is the kind of money to be made in all the different areas. I mean, if you want to create a search engine, or you want to create a social media platform, all that kind of stuff is, you had all those opportunities, or an agency back then, or you wanted to sell on the web, you would have been unique, or created Amazon. Okay. You could shake if you could shake that person and say, the world is your oyster. The opportunity is, and pick a direction, pick anything. You want to be a lawyer, be an Amazon lawyer. If you want to be an accountant or a bookkeeper, be an Amazon bookkeeper or an accountant. Okay. I mean, almost any industry, once you add an Amazon label to it, you're now in a non-competitive environment. Okay, I know a lot of people that listen to this do this all day. They think that it's really crowded, but all the people that know how to do this stuff, even if it's just a PPC campaign or how to put a listing up, you are a unicorn. Okay, you're a rainbow unicorn. They're in outer space. Okay, there's so much room to go anywhere that you want, and the only answer is more Amazon, more faster Amazon. That's the only. So
what do you think the perception is the opposite? I would almost say 99% of people are saying, the opposite. Do you think that's just for competitive, like I don't want you to jump in? Like, I almost feel like people are too close to it to see like the actual allure of Amazon. And because I don't sell on Amazon, that's the beauty of the show is, we're a service provider and we help people like become more profitable, not being a very close-minded. You're in it every day. You're in the weeds. You're in the thick and thin of it. I have the beauty, just like yourself, maybe, of like the 10,000 foot perspective of,
yes,
do we not seeing like these mountains literally moving in front of us that are just like, it's just like how quickly this evolved into something that's like a commonality in the day-to-day life, where expectations are just completely set for you.
Yes.
Of, I can get my goods in 2 hours. Are you crazy? Like, I am personally, Chris, I'm still waiting on a e-commerce store. I ordered something back in September 1st. I still haven't received it to my door yet. And I can go on Amazon and probably get something very similar. I'll be honest with you. It's a king size bed frame. I'm still waiting on this thing on a container coming from like overseas to the United States.
Yes.
And it's been months. But Amazon can probably do the same thing within, at maximum, like a month or something like that. So
you ordered through a discount bed frame place.
I didn't. Right? It was through. I'll be honest. It's through West Elm. So West Elm, if you're out there listening, I'm very disappointed in you.
Yes.
And I don't know what happened with it.
Yeah, I had a nightmare in that respect too, and that's kind of old school how to order it. And quite frankly, you will be able to order that stuff on Amazon. I don't know, you probably can do it now, but
I'm sure the furniture is definitely.
Oh, it's a no-brainer. I mean, And by the way, he just backed off of pharma. That didn't work out quite well, but they learned a lot of lessons, and he'll conquer that. I mean, there are auto companies that work with people that I work with at the C-suite level that are planning on, you're going to be able to order your car on Amazon. In fact, that'll be probably the most convenient way, and somebody will drive it up in 2 hours to your door, right? So there's
You
that.
think that's an actual that's something within the next year or two that we're going to be seeing?
No, I don't know about year or two, but
Well,
there's a pecking order, right?
I thought we were getting some breaking news. I was like,
Oh, no. I mean,
tell us.
here's an example though. Like Pantry just folded 2 days ago.
Yeah, I saw that.
See that, and the first thing is like, wow, what a fail, and then you're like, no, they were just assimilating. They'll be back. They're like the Borg, they'll be back. They just learned how to conquer it next time, right?
Right. They have been able to rebrand things and put it together in different use case scenarios, and it's always testing. So, with that being said, what's kind of so you're kind of seeing more trends, I think, than on a day-to-day basis, or like where people are kind of shouting where the want is, like almost like Amazon has the product and you have the demand over here, and you're trying to connect the two. What kind of trends are you seeing, especially going into 2021? What trends are people most looking for that need, solutions solved for?
So there's two ways of answering that. One is the baseline is everyone needs help in all areas of Amazon, period. Okay. So if you have any skill sets in Amazon, will be valued. Okay. It's general sweeping. So if you really like Amazon PPC, there's places, you can go work as an independent, ultra mobile, guy in, Bangladesh, and kill it working for an agency because you're really good, and that's all you do is follow Amazon PPC all day, which is an art form. Okay, but you can also really be good at soliciting feedback and managing, doing feedback management, or you can be really good at the fledgling influencer stuff that Amazon also struggles to get going. The posts, Amazon influencer, Amazon affiliate. There's very few agencies that are having a chance to get to that stuff. And if you're really good at social media offline, I can hit, no offense to anybody out there, but I'm in Cincinnati and I can throw a stone and hit 6 social media managers that are really good at what they do and they're data driven, and I don't mean that in any way, or digital agencies that, they all sound the same. They're all traditional digital agencies. They all sound the same. They took 20 years to incorporate technology, and now, things moved on. So, but once you add Amazon, the label Amazon, it's crickets. There's a brand new field of, freshly mowed, grass, and you can frolic in any direction you want. Okay. The trick is, there's a couple new models you can come up with, but what are you going to do in your land grab? And that's kind of what I wanted to go back to that person back in '97, say there's a land grab going on, move fast, but pick a direction and go fast.
Right.
So
interesting. So what's kind of like so there's obviously lots of like service providers out there that are trying to problem solve and whatnot. You mentioned a couple different ways of, hey, if you put your name on Amazon or whatever it is, you can actually be super successful. Is there just like a problem that's not consistently being like looked at enough, and it's actually just this underlying, gosh, like I wish someone would do this and no one just has done it yet?
I'm not dodging your question, but it's just everywhere. Okay. And what I mean by that is,
that's a fair answer.
Yeah. I mean, so maybe the way to look at it, and if you're looking for like metrics or something to maybe put your arms around the opportunity, but it is, in my estimation, and I think the people that know what they're doing agree with me, about 75% of listings on Amazon are probably not fully optimized. Okay. You can still squeeze, they didn't get the page title right, or they're targeting the wrong whatever, or they didn't add A+ content, or they don't have a storefront, or, even the basics. About 75% of them, you can come by and just, and a trained person can say, oh yeah, their page style sucks, just like you could do with Google. Right. And so that said, if you're a person looking for a job in the marketing industry, just add Amazon to your resume, because salaries just went up 30 to 70%. I work with one of the only Amazon HR agencies, they place only Amazon folks, mainly ex-Amazonians also, but they estimate salaries went up 30 to 70 cents since March in this sector. Okay, so if you have the skills, just alone in a salary, right? But if you're a seller, I would suggest now's the time to buy. If you want to add to your portfolio, you see a darling brand out there and you can afford to grab it. Now's the time, because it's only those brands that are there are only going up in value. Think of them like houses, like flipping houses. Okay. And so if you see one that's like, wow, this is a great hot sauce. This is a great product. I really want to get into hot sauces. Right. And you say, I order this, my friends order this stuff, but their listing sucks, and if you have the means, buy them. Okay. And then crank it up and then flip it, sell it, because there's a seller environment out right now. Also, I should say it's a brand selling environment right now. It will be for the next 10 years. So put together a portfolio of 3 or 4 kick-ass brands, or whatever, and you're going to sell them for 4 or 5x in a couple years if you do things right. If you have the right partners, the right agencies, people like you, Ryan,
hit me up. Yeah, we have come. Yeah, and that's the exciting thing about like our space is because I think it's not every and this is the thing, like I've worked for companies that have been in the Amazon space that obviously have like misstepped, but they rebounce back, and it's refocusing on what you're good at and saying, this is what you don't stretch yourself too thin. You don't say we're good at everything, because it's almost impossible to do. But if you do the right things about like, what you're good at, what people are coming to you for, that's always going to be a profitable piece of your sector. And then obviously like a little here, a little there, you start buying those companies, or you become well-rounded and you develop these partnerships together, which I think is what you're alluding to. For the audience, if you're listening, if you have questions, or submit these in the comments of the podcast. If you're listening on audio form, how do you find your potential partnerships for your Amazon business? If the audience wants to submit those questions, or if it's obviously as simple as going on Google and kind of searching those topics, but maybe you, for Chris, how do you, like, when you're finding these kinds of companies, what's that process look like?
Yeah. So, I used to go, I had a checklist. I, call up these companies and I have them go through the checklist. But again, especially when it's an agency that's covering a lot of the stuff that you need to do. So, they manage your listings, they do your campaigns, they do all that stuff, right? That is an important relationship, right? And so there's many aspects you need to get right about that. Obviously, you need to, I would look at prior work. I would look at, how big they are. Obviously, their charges. I would encourage talking to at least 3 to 5 agencies before I make any sort of decision. Questions around, what do I have an account manager? What do you guys use for project management? What's my interaction look like? Do I have a monthly meeting? What does the sample report look like for that? Again, prior work, especially when you're hiring somebody to also manage your brand, which is also kind of unique. I should say, it's one thing to find an agency that pulls levers well. They have the nerds, which you need. You need those nerds in the basement or wherever you put your nerds. You need those nerds, right? But you also need somebody that can interpret.
That was the most I've heard nerds be spoken in one sentence. That
Right.
I'm just going to stop and just recognize how awesome that sentence was. And for all of you quote nerds out there, we are so sorry. I think Chris and I can both admit we were both nerds in terms of like Amazon and data and analytics and all that fun stuff. But anyways, continue.
No, I just
I'm cracking up over here.
No, I mean, if you're PPC guy, should just, it should be just the most boring person you talk to. I mean, honestly, I'm going to back off from that, but
which is funny. Yeah. But to that point, I think it's funny because the PPC people that I know in the space are actually the most like boisterous, most loud people and friendly in the space. And we're going to have one on Monday, which I actually super admire in terms of his knowledge on Amazon, but they all tout PPC. And I swear it's not just people behind spreadsheets and things. We're going to talk about PPC, I think, 2 or 3 times next week. And those people are the most genuine / they are hilarious and loud. Brilliant people. Brilliant people. Yes. Exactly. Okay. Which is funny because I think that's the wave that you're talking about, is like everyone's trying to put their stake as like, this is how you become profitable. Oh, yeah. Just like SEM was big for Google, this is big for Amazon sellers. But to your point, that it's just really funny how you think people should react, but they're actually completely
right. But
the loudest people in the room.
but if you're a moderate sized brand, right, you're used to an agency, your ad agency, probably you have an account manager, that interfaces with you. Maybe they bring in, forgive me, I love you nerds. They bring in the nerd, at the middle of the meeting to kind of go over the PPC stats, and then they go away, kind of thing. And they're used to that kind of interaction with an agency. Well, that immediately says, well, okay, you're not looking at a 2-person agency. You're looking at probably something, more like you, Ryan, something in the 20 plus, but not 50 plus kind of range. And so, right. As far as employees, and that says a lot about where, the maturity of that company, that they've had success, that, and they're really mitigating their risk for what is the most important decision they will ever make in their business's history, period.
Yeah. So going a little bit apart from that, I had something that kind of got top of mind yesterday. I was looking through LinkedIn. Maybe we'll divert a little bit about like what Amazon's doing in the space, and maybe we can go from there. So there is a report that came out, I think like consumer report, that was released in Business Insider. I posted on my LinkedIn page and Facebook page. I think it came out to be that people think that it's too hard to cancel your Amazon Prime subscription. And I think that, I'm assuming you saw that report too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's kind of like the mentality of, or what do you think the reason is? I mean, I have my own thoughts, but what do you think the reason is for reports like this to come out and say is something as what could be as simple as canceling a subscription, which should be easy for like your Netflix or anything like that, being too hard to do, and you can't just like remove yourself from that process? What's kind of your first reaction when you hear articles like that?
Yeah, they probably already solved it by the time you went to print. You know what I mean?
Well, it's like no comment, and it was like there was a bunch of different reactions that.
Okay,
Amazon was like, "Oh no, it was." I say comments of like Amazon was like, "This is completely opposite and not true." And I'm looking for the article, and I can pull it up real quick. So
I am not. I think maybe the root of your question is I'm not a everything Amazon is rosy person by any means. I mean, the labor issues obviously are huge, pay and that kind of stuff. Those are huge issues. Environmental issues, whether or not he's donated enough. His wife certainly did. But those are all fair attacks, and in no way means do I think he's a brilliant person, but probably flawed. That said, and same with Amazon, and obviously I speak with just I would talk to the marketplace side, but never mind the AWS side that's also doing great as well. And so they get a lot of flack. One of the things that you're going to see up in the in Washington also, or you would have seen in Washington if it hadn't been pushed back, obviously, is they're competing. They have competitive products with sellers on their own marketplace. You'll see a bunch of articles on Bloomberg and others, that say, well, that's not fair practice, right? Well, you ever walk into a Kroger? I mean, do you ever walk into a Target and they have their own brand that's sitting right next to the name brand, like the Post? It's
just not named Kroger. Yeah, it's like Fresh Market or whatever.
It's generic. It's a generic brand, and guess what? You buy it. It's got great quality. The customer data they use to put that right next to the shelf, the packaging, the color, all of that's driven by the data that they stole from the competitor sitting right next to the box.
They even say on those packaging, very similar or just as like almost with like medicines or anything like that, like Claritin or like all these other different like things that you could be buying. They're just manufacturing them themselves and not sticking a brand on it.
Yeah. So Amazon has Amazon Basics, which most people know, but they have about 40 generic brands that are Amazon owned, produced and owned, that compete right alongside. They're labeled as Amazon, the sellers, whatever. But the point is who cares? I mean, if they choose to identify a couple, some products in a couple categories that are succeeding for them, well, good luck. I mean, that's not new. That's nothing new, and they're being attacked for that and threatened with breakup. Now, there's many other reasons to break them up, but that may be one of them.
So with the data and analytics side of things, I know we can maybe hone in on that aspect. Do you think that sellers should have the same, and brands should have the same insight as Amazon does, and how well, like either just themselves or that industry that they belong to is performing? Or do you think that's proprietary to Amazon and that data is allowed to be used strictly? I mean, because that's kind of where Amazon Basics come in and where sellers kind of fight back is, hey, this product was doing really well. You went directly to my sourcing manufacturer XYZ and you just replicated it, did it for cheaper, and now you put me out of business. What's kind of that? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, when, the focusing on the data aspect, which is very frustrating, again, for a brand that's come from like, again, a Kroger environment, for instance, or, they get POS data, or they get real-time POS data or membership programs or all that data that, they can pull out of that as well. Or you just simply when you get, again, data you get at the cash register or credit card, signups and things like that. Really, all of that now is behind the Amazon. Amazon owns that, right? And they dole it out, as again, most sellers know, sparingly for short periods of time. So, you might be able to run a report for the last, at most 6 months, depending on the report of data. There, you may be able to, you wish you could get conversion rate on XYZ, and they simply just don't offer it to you. And the reason is they are ultimately a data company, which is the back end of that frontline documentary, which everybody should have, anybody listening to this should go watch tonight as homework. But the back end of obviously is the privacy issues and and how much they know, between them and Apple and Google, they know everything about you, your location, and certainly your buying habits more than ever, but yet they still don't share it out. They dole it out. So there's ways around that. There's ways of quote unquote recording Amazon, and then running reports over time, projecting out, trying to get the data, customer lifetime value, conversion rates, obviously, ACoS, all that kind of stuff needs to go into professional systems, which, again, Fortune 500s are used to cranking it through Tableau and giving it to their data, the nerds, right? Giving it to the Tableau guys to pull out the report that the CEO likes to get.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't I get this report out of him?
Yeah, and for those who don't know what Tableau is, they were just acquired by Salesforce, which is obviously another Fortune 10 company, like they're top 5 maybe even right now, that's constantly just buying up companies, and they're trying to solve that problem with data and all this stuff. They even bought Salesforce even bought Slack this year. Was it Slack? I think Salesforce bought Slack this year.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So even them making big moves in the space of data and analytics, and that's the other thing I always tout with people is the data aspect of like, oh, like they can't like own my data, but like anytime you use a cell phone or anytime you use like internet services, from my perspective and background, my expertise comes in affiliate marketing and deal making and stuff like that. People know and can follow you around in terms of marketing. You just don't think you know it, but at the back of your mind, you're accepting. Anytime you click, I accept these terms and conditions, or at the bottom of the pages that you go to, of like, I accept the cookies. These people are gaining your information. They're dropping a tracker on your device, and they're going to know exactly who you are, how long you shop, what you're looking at, and then reserve those ads to you. You just may not think that you're that special, but you are. Like all this data is going and feeding some sort of information. It's not a bad thing either. It's helped like.
I don't know.
We
saw the results of too much social media, but too much internet.
Too much internet and social media for one person or another might be a bad shift the whole entire economy or world landscape. But we'll kind of back off that whole train.
Sure.
But but that being said, I know there's documentaries out there like the bad side of it, but it's also good because like for things like contact tracing, for example, you can do things and see how track phone location and see movements and kind of understand on a holistic level or like a very high level of where people are moving, how often they are traveling, things like that, where safety precaution wise, or even for like military reasons, you can find enemies of state or things like that. As crazy as it is, there's always something that you can tie data and analytics back to. So it's not always a bad thing, but it can be a bad thing. We had a question from LinkedIn. So the name of the document we should watch, I'm going to pull up the clip real quick. And Chris, before our next question, for everyone who's watching on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, or on, I'm trying to think of on Twitter. That's the last one. I'll never forget about Twitter. If you're watching this, we'll definitely put all the links in all of our comments. if you're watching this later, because this is early East Coast time, because this is where Chris and I live, we're on the early side of the country. If you're just waking up on the West Coast, we'll put those links in. We're talking about some different documentaries and some cool articles that you should definitely be aware of in terms of the Frontline documentary. So we'll make sure that link gets into our LinkedIn posts or wherever we're going live on. So the next question. So I think, what was the name of it? Just to kind of.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. It's it was called. It's by PBS Frontline as the documentary maker, I guess, and then it's I believe it's called the Amazon Empire. And that should be enough to Google it, but we'll definitely put a link in there. And again, I recommend it. It's long. It's 2 hours, but at the end of it, you're like, oh, the world has changed.
It's a good Friday night. Like, it's a good Friday night. Like, you have a glass of wine or a beer, and then you cozy up, and you look at your wife at the end. You're like, it makes sense now, and then you go to bed. You feel better about it.
One thing also that emphasizes this in the story, not to spoil it, but he as a kid, realized that humans are consuming the earth too fast. It was his 8th grade report, and his goal is to get humanity off of the earth. He's going to do that by basically owning e-commerce. Okay, so basically that's the story in short. But he just took a step towards saving humanity yesterday. If you watched the launch of Blue Origin, which is his rocket, Elon has his rocket program, but so does Jeff, and so it is the coolest thing ever. If you have 15 minutes a day, again with a glass of wine at the end of a Friday, go to, I think it's Blue Origin. I think it's their channel. It's a watch the whole thing. It's like 2-hour launch party, but I think at minute 58, just watch the launch. It's amazing.
When you mentioned that too, it's also really cool. And I know this has nothing to do with our topic, but that's how this podcast goes. We iterate and we go with the flow. Nothing's ever scripted here. So that's why our audience loves us. Anyways, we provide content and then we pivot really hard.
Yeah, I won't go into what Blue Origin looks like, but I'll let you decide on that. And
we watched SpaceX launch with the astronauts, and that was a really cool thing to show my son. I was like thinking about how long ago it was before they were sending like astronauts back into space, because when I was a little kid, that really inspired my creativity. And I think for a lot of people, there's always a moment on TV or on radio or wherever, like or in the newspaper, if you're that old, you were reading about it and you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's possible. And we just kind of like gloss over things now of how quickly things just kind of change and evolve. Like, my phone now is more powerful than a room of computers back 10 years ago. And that's the crazy thing about now. But we watched that launch, and my son, it was just like the same look that we had when we were both kids of like, oh my gosh, that's inspiring, and kind of move on from there. But when you see people like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, when they're dabbling in all these you think about it you think it's like crazy, like space travel, or as crazy as like, I think Jeff Bezos came out with like this cruise line, or like there was something with the ship and he named his mom after it, or like it was named after his mom, I believe. Yep. All these different things that they're dabbling in. What do you think is like the end game for like big kinds of entrepreneur minds like a Jeff Bezos or an Elon Musk? Like, it's not obviously to take over the world, but they have like a vision that they want to be successful with.
Yeah, I mean, it's truly amazing. I mean, they're definitely the smartest minds. I mean, obviously they're the richest people. Obviously, Bezos, and they're lockstep. I think Elon just overtook him last week. Not that I track this stuff, and it's kind of sick. It's a kind of sick, the amount of money they'd have. It's unfathomable, and it shouldn't be that way. But regardless, I'm not going to get into that either. But they really have a different way of looking at everything. I'll say it a third time, but watch the documentary. And again, it's just, the guy wants to save humanity, and he's going to consume, he's going to invent drones so that he can deliver, packages in less, now in Brazil, if you would order something like through Mercado Libre, which is, their big marketplace, it may show up, if you live in land in the Amazon, literally, it may show up 5 or 6 days later. It may fall off the back of the truck, and he's literally putting landing pads in. He's testing out his drones to deliver and drop packages literally in the Amazon. And that same technology will have him, let him deliver in the Sahara and parts of Africa and places where roads aren't and stuff. And so obviously that's down the line, but that's where he's going, and there's no reason you can't at that point, sell your product to that guy that needs it in the middle of the Sahara. I mean, that's where we're going. And so that's why I say we're only beginning, because he's only got 14 countries, and he's not even the number one in those countries yet. Yeah.
Right. And a lot of those places, sorry, I'm popping up. I found the link for everyone to put it in. It looks like already a lot of our audience found it too. So found it. Thanks, Amazon Empire, the reign of Jeff Bezos, full film Frontline. You can watch it on YouTube for free. I pulled it on there as well. The link it was posted on our Facebook and our LinkedIn channels. So again, if you're watching this retroactively, go into this post, find it on this date. Obviously it's January 15th now already. Gosh, we're already halfway through January. I know. It's crazy. It feels like a year, but like it's almost like you're just reshifting mentalities again. It's crazy. But yeah, that documentary is on my list of things to do. I'll have to force my wife to watch it. Like instead of another like Netflix series, which is another crazy kind of road to go down, because Netflix just announced they're having a new video every week for the entire year. It's like a feature film, and you think about that concept of how much content that they're pumping out, and everyone still asks, how are they making money? No one really knows, besides, I mean, there's backgrounds of how you can do that. But anyways, that being said, yeah, go ahead.
Real quick, there are some supplementary like vignettes off of that documentary. So the people the experts that you see, they interview like 5 outside Amazon and 5 inside Amazon, current inside folks. And then they obviously sit downs, and I would recommend those vignettes. There's hours of content, and it's just all gold on just really getting your arms around Amazon. So.
Absolutely. And PBS obviously does a great job with like unbiased like information, and they do a great job of in-depth documentaries. So definitely put it on your list to consume. That's really neat. Shout out. And then we had another comment come in from LinkedIn. Thank you, Chris, for sharing so many insights and information. So it's obviously great to like walk away from talks like this for more information. But before the top of the hour and before you have to go, Chris, sure. If you have other questions, again, everyone who's watching this live, thanks for joining and submitting your questions and comments. We'll definitely go live again all next week. We actually have 5 episodes. But before we leave, Chris, yeah, it's funny. I was telling people every time that they ask, how do you get into podcasting? I said, well, it was an accident on my part. It was a project that I did one-off for because we're in our company in ping pong, we're an international company. And I'll just kind of like tell this story real quick for our audience. We're an international company. So obviously we're sharing information back and forth. We have colleagues in China. We have colleagues in India. We have colleagues all around the world, where our offices are trying to like help sellers, not just in the United States, but around the world. So he came to me, one of my counterparts in China, said, hey, we have lots of questions coming about imagery, copyright infringement, things like that, because as sellers in China, you get the bad, there's this bad stigma of they always steal listings, or they steal content, they steal all this stuff, but they want to know how to protect themselves in terms of like just to be a good seller. And that's obviously what we want sellers to do, is do the right thing, follow compliance, not like it's a competitive landscape, obviously. But with that being said, it was just a one-off episode that I was like, just like you, I was like, oh, I think I know people that would like help me want to jump on with this project. And we started making calls around, and we got 3 of us together. One of them is now my mentor, and like I call he works for a crew me over named Rob Stanley, and he was on our first episode as a co-host. I know. And yeah, exactly. So I think we connected with each other. So I reached out to him. He goes, I'm just so busy, man. Like I don't think I can commit to all these different podcasts. And I go, okay, well, I'll do it then. And like he just kind of like took it and like took off, and now we're on episode 38. All of January's booked out. February's going to be booked out. But just like not many repeats of people just want to talk mindset in Amazon. But like you, I think it's really cool to talk about like how businesses are like shifting in these big kind of like glacier like ways of, there's so many different movements of going on. It's just like subtle, but now you're trying to like push them quicker and like speed up that process. Has 2020 been the reason that that's kind of like been that rocket maybe for what you're doing, or e-commerce, or those off Amazon people trying to get on Amazon?
It crunched the next 4 or 5 years together. If you were a brand that was like considering Amazon like a threat, or we'll figure that out later, or we're going to dip our toe in it, how hard can it be? All those people are like just almost overnight are like, okay, we've got to figure out for this. So it crunched everything. It's been very good for business. I mean, it's been basically double supernova. It was already going supernova, but it's now double. But yeah, a couple things I would just like to say, if I may, because I know a lot of my agency folks that are out there, the non-Amazon folks, are out of, depending on through no fault of their own, maybe out of job. And because, depending on your agency and the portfolio you had, you may have a brand that just collapsed and therefore you don't get paid. So I know there's a whole lot of people out there in the workforce. I cannot emphasize enough that your skills are needed over here with a new, you just need to learn a little things. You probably do it in an afternoon and your value just would double. Okay. So if you're a photographer, if you're a translator, if you're a PPC person, or you like SEO, or you like anything, you're a logistics guy, anything, just put Amazon in front of it and learn it. And it's nice over here. It's nice and balmy, and the sun comes up every day. Okay.
People are, the business continues to flow through. It's not hard to market in that capacity too.
Yep.
So that's a good point. So Chris, when people are, for people who want to reach out and maybe like solicit or like pick your mind, you've been fantastic, just like running through ideas with me. And I have a lot of follow-up for you as well on all the things I owe. God, darn that holiday like break that we just like can't get to all of our list of things. But anyways, how can people get in touch with you, or what's the best way to kind of either work with you or just like pick your brain or network with you?
Sure. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only one of two Fryburgers with a name like that, but
Christopher Fryburger, though.
Yeah, and then it's nReach without an I, and there's more information there. Just reach out to me. I love to talk about this stuff, and I love to help brands and sellers just do more on Amazon, because that is the answer. More on Amazon.
Yeah, and Chris and I have had a couple of conversations off live streams that are just hilarious to me in terms of like what ends up coming up with our conversations. So I say hilarious because like no one else, I think you're one of the quicker people that can like pivot really quickly, go down this path and say like, hey, did you know about this? Or did you hear about this concept? Or did you know about this? I think a lot of people just don't have that holistic mindset like you do. I think a lot of people try to, but you've been the one that's just constantly like, hey, this company, maybe you should talk to them, or this idea, did you hear about this one, or all these different concepts. So I appreciate what you do. You're only a team of one, right? Like you're a team of one in a few.
Yeah, but I've got a couple that help me, do the day-to-day stuff. But but that said, I can't fix a plumbing thing for anything. So yeah, I know. I like to think I know this sector. I like to help anybody as well. But so it's just. Don't underestimate the importance and the amount of work that's necessary on this side. And again, it is the most important decision I think you'll make is how are you going to act on or react to Amazon? So
absolutely. And because you actually get your business model is basically you need people to be successful in these partnerships in order to continue to grow your own business.
Of course.
So that's why it's always important to like make sure you're doing the homework and doing the right things to connect. So obviously I end with telling everyone that's a guest, you're now a friend of the show of Crossover Commerce. So anytime that you want to hop on, your comments or suggestions, always come on and you're welcome to join. If you're just like watching and live and you're like, hey, I have a comment on that, you will get a link right away to hop in with people to like join and kind of like joust around with people. But we'll have more. I have a lot of cool projects on my mind in terms of 2021 with like top people in the space where they can start talking about bigger topics, and we'll have multiple guests on,
awesome,
kind of doing a roundtable. So I would love to have you on in the future as well. But thank you so much for kind of the Amazon matchmaker, if you will, Chris Fryburger of nReach. Again, his email is below in the comment. If you're listening to this on our podcast, go ahead and reach out to him, Chris at nReach.com. And Chris, thank you so much. Why don't you stick around, and then I'll follow up with you after this. But for everyone else, thank you so much for joining us on Crossover Commerce this week. This has been a fantastic week full of knowledge. We had one sick person on Monday, but they're coming back next week. We just have lots of different content that's actually going to be popping up throughout the week. We're going live 5 times next week. So it's the most we're doing in a week. And then we have more webinars for ping pong side of things that are going to be coming up and announced through our social media channels. Go ahead and follow PingPong Payments on both LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and on Instagram. We announce all those different things coming up. You'll have links to join. Subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and on Spotify or wherever you consume them. We have such great content that's being released out all the time. So make sure you consume that information. If you have questions, you can reach me in my social channels on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram as well. So for Chris Fryburger of nReach, I'm Ryan Cramer, the host of this show, Crossover Commerce. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you guys again next week.